Welcome to the POMcast with Steve Willis, your independent, unbiased, and unbought source for Ole Miss athletics. Good morning, good morning, good morning. Wednesday, October 7th, 2020. Thanks for joining us on the POMcast. I am your host, Stephen Willis, and we're going to get into some wet weather. We are going to talk a little bit about Alabama's offense, and we're going to talk a little bit about Ole Miss's defense. So that'll be the matchup today on this Wednesday. Before we get started with that, let's take care of a little business. You can follow us on Twitter at the Stephen Willis or at Ole Positively. You can like us on Facebook at facebook.com/positively or /POMcast, facebook.com/POMcast, or you can join our Facebook group at Positively Ole Miss. You can subscribe to our YouTube channel at Positively Ole Miss, and you can join us on Twitch. Search Positively Ole Miss and give us a follow. It's all one word. Of course, if audio is your bag, we are on a plethora of audio sources with Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and iHeartRadio and Pandora, I think. So you can sign up and subscribe there and hear the podcast. Our whole shtick is we are where you are already. So you're never going to be asked to go to a second location with us. We'll come and tell you all you need to know exactly where you are. We're proud of that. That's kind of the idea, the genesis behind this whole Positively Ole Miss experiment. So we're not going to extort you for money. All the information is absolutely free, and nobody out there that is doing this has a resume like mine in this industry. So it's also unique. And that makes up for the struggles that I'm having a little bit, because about a year ago I had 2 brain surgeries. So now I'm kind of getting back in the swing of things and talking out loud after really not talking much for about a year. But that's what we're looking at. That's Positively Ole Miss. We're not going to extort you for money. We're not going to ask you to go to a second location. Enjoy us from where you already are. That's the whole point. And this weekend, a little bit of a wet weather game. Looking at the weekend forecast on weather.com, it looks like Friday's rain chance has increased for Oxford, Mississippi up to 70%. So they're expecting it to hit a little bit before midnight, the rain hitting. Friday night, or that's during the day, Friday night, 90% rain. So Saturday, 80%. So it looks like most of the rainfall, I mean, they're expecting during the day, Saturday, a half an inch of rain. Saturday night, about a half an inch of rain. So they're expecting Friday to be the really affected day for Oxford at this point. So at this point, everything is looking good. Now, thoughts and prayers for Alabama coming in. They might need to take a bus to the hotel, because it's going to rain. Friday 70%, Friday night 90%, Saturday day 80%, Saturday night 70%. So that is something to pay attention to. But it looks like we got a good forecast today. Of course, that is all going to be subject to change as this thing hits landfall, which it is currently doing at the moment in Cancun in Mexico. and how it reacts when it gets back into the water. Does it speed up? Does it slow down? But it looks like it is set up for a late Friday night, early Saturday morning effective really hit. And after that, it's going to deteriorate. So it looks like we're going to play football Saturday, in my opinion. I don't see anything wind related and rainfall related that would cause it to wash out, honestly. So we get to see which quarterback is better at throwing the wet football, which offense is better in wet conditions. One would think Najee Harris has the advantage of being kind of a mutter, but don't sleep on the quickness and the missed tackle ability of Jerry and Ely. So honestly, we need to discuss, and we probably will at some point this week, maybe in segment 2. It might take over. I just thought of this. This might be a John Rice Plumlee kind of game. This might be why he keeps being held where he is. Because at the wind at 13 miles an hour, 8 miles an hour, I mean, you might be able to throw the ball, but during the day, they're expecting winds out of the south at 10 to 20 miles an hour. If they do that, the passing game is less effective. Now, since they bowled in the stadium, it kind of reacts differently to the wind. I don't know if you've noticed that. It's not the wind tunnel it once was whenever both end zones were kind of open. But the south end zone is the raised area. I mean, that's where all the suites are. That's where it's built up, and that's the area that Eli built, basically. So it's going to affect the wind a little bit differently, but it's going to be interesting to see about throwing the ball if the wind is actually 10, 20 miles an hour. If it's actually gusting. It could be a run. It could be a low-scoring game. This could be a Vegas nightmare. One of those 24-14 type games. Because Alabama on defense is no longer built just to constrict you. That's over in Athens now. All right, segment 1 in the book. Stephen Willis, POMcast. Stick around.
Only 10% of us get enough daily exercise.
And that number is dropping.
Nearly 30% of us are overweight or obese.
We spend 6 hours a day in front of a screen.
As a result, we now have a shorter life expectancy than our parents.
But give us the right start in sports, and we'll never stop.
Learn how at active4life.ca.
Hey, this is Stephen Willis from Positively Ole Miss. We're almost done with this break. We'll be back with good information quite soon.
The military has been in every generation of my family, and so has VA. It wasn't easy for my dad after Vietnam, but VA helped him and my mom get the home they'd always wanted. My grandpa's been coming to VA since World War II. They even helped him lay to rest one of his battle buddies from Normandy. And me, I followed in their footsteps and served with pride. And now that I'm out of the military, the GI Bill's helping me with school. Every generation of my family has served, and VA has served us all.
All right, POMcast, Stephen Willis, right here on this Wednesday morning. We're talking a little bit Ole Miss, Alabama, and wet weather. There's a hurricane in the Gulf, And it looks like it's going to track right over Oxford, Mississippi at some point. But by the time, honestly, it gets to Oxford, Mississippi, it won't be anywhere near a hurricane, obviously. But it's worth keeping an eye on, I guess. But they're expecting what's considered either a low-pressure front or at max a tropical depression by the time it hits Oxford. Now, in South Louisiana, like the Baton Rouge, the LSU-Missouri game has moved to Columbia, Missouri. The kickoff will be at 11 o'clock in the morning because they just didn't want to risk doing that in Baton Rouge, which makes sense because Baton Rouge is closer, much closer to the Gulf than Ole Miss. I mean, for everybody freaking out about what's happening, we always talk in recruiting how hard we have in recruiting the Gulf Coast because it's 6 hours away from Oxford. Just remember, it's 6 hours away to the coast. So that's a lot of land that this thing is going to weaken over. And it's going to weaken quickly if right now is any indication. It intensified quickly. It's going to weaken quickly. When it gets back into the Gulf, we need to see what it's going to do because it may just reform. It may not reform at all because this storm seems quite volatile. By the way, a hobby of mine is weather, and I love hurricanes and things like that. That's another reason I'm moving to Florida. So that's going to be a whole lot of fun. But anyway, we have the wet ball. And before we went into the break, we talked about the possibility that you might see more John Rice Plumlee this week. Just because the weather factor is going to take away some of the pass game and remove some of the deep threat. So what you're going to see from Alabama, I'll talk about this on offensively, is it's not going to be sweeping deep shots. It's going to be screen game, hitch game, things like that. Some stuff close to the line of scrimmage because their wide receivers still are their best athletes. Mac Jones, as we've told you, is more of an A.J. McCarron type quarterback at Alabama. Although yesterday, I forget the radio show I was listening to, they were talking to, and they said that Greg McElroy was actually bigger and had a stronger arm than Mac Jones, which I did not realize. Maybe Mac Jones just looks bigger on TV than to me. But, you know, they were trying to figure out where he fits. And basically, you know, I think he's an A.J. McCarron type quarterback. They compared him to Jake Browning at Washington. That style quarterback. But that's pretty similar. But basically it's game managers that can make all the throws, they can do what you need, but mainly they aren't going to make mistakes. They're not elite playmakers. They're not going to make mistakes, but they're going to do what they're asked to do well. If that makes sense. So, Jalen Waddle, Devontae Smith, and the bunch they're going to scheme. These are two people in Lane Kiffin and Steve Sarkisian that are kind of from the same school of offense. Now, Sark runs his spread a little bit differently. And you probably have seen that. But the principles of it was all formed at the same time. It's all Norm Chow based. It's basically taken what he did with Matt Leinart and the boys back at USC and incorporated it in a spread offense. Now, Kiffin has gone more Baylor spread. And what I mean by that is the way they go sideline to sideline, the run game, the tempo. That's what he wants to do because he wants to basically run the Baylor system. And as we've seen, call about 10 plays based on personnel that are designed to be shot plays. That's what he sees. And also, after working with Saban, he has kind of CEO'd it and just turned it over to Jeff Lebby. But there's going to be 10 plays that are Lane Kiffin shot plays because he's very good at stacking plays on top of plays. That's one of the strengths of him, and that is not something that he should give up, and I don't think he would give up. So Sark is more what he was running at USC, at Washington. So basically what you do is it's very methodical, really. It's not really tempo based. They can run tempo, but it's not tempo based. Just a second. But you'll see spread principles and matchup principles designed in a similar way. They, like I said, they all learned it from Norm Chow. Both offenses are really, right at this point, kind of mirror images of each other. Sark runs more of a traditional spread passing offense versus Lane Kiffin's Baylor spread passing offense. But the concepts in the passing game is kind of the same. You're not going to see the stuff that was run in Central Florida very much, where two receivers are 3 yards apart because of the stack. They're all outside the numbers. It's not quite that spread. There's a little bit, they've kind of brought it back towards the middle, just a little bit, but incorporated the Baylor run concepts. Because that's what Lane Kiffin wants, is the Baylor run concepts. And then you can do the shot plays with the tempo and just count on somebody on the other team making a mistake. So that's something to look at. And with Matt Corral, it's been fantastic over the last couple of weeks. But the weather might take that away this weekend. We need to be prepared for that. If that happens, it could be a game perfectly positioned for John Rice Plumlee. Now, I'm not calling for him. I'm not saying he should play. I'm not saying that he should take most of the snaps. I'm simply putting it out as a possibility with the weather that it might fit him better than Matt Corral. Remember, Ole Miss ran zone running schemes all last year. They are very well drilled on how to run the ball out of the zone. Zone blocking. Now, Kenny Yeboah and the tight ends probably aren't because, last year we had Octavius Cooley and Jason Pellerin. But it's a situation where Nick Broker, Ben Brown, and Royce Newman are well drilled. And in the practices, Jeremy James and Reese McIntyre also got those reps. So they know how to do it. That's the point of this. So at any point, Kiffin has the flexibility to make a decision. He says he does what works. And the weather is going to dictate what is going to work. Because I'm not sure how much they're going to be able to run the ball against Alabama without a quarterback run threat. Matt Corral is an excellent runner. I mean, if it wasn't for John Rice, he would probably be mentioned in the same breath as Chad Kelly. And we don't want to get too predictable, but that is something that is probably going to be looked at. Matt Corral has won the job. He is going to be the quarterback. I'm just simply mentioning for the sake of discussion, not calling for anything. But it's going to be interesting because this will be Kiffin's first wet weather game. And being so, you'll get to see how he calls the game because the game will not be called the same way. They've been 60-65% run through 2 games already this year. The only reason it's not making noise around the fan base are the deep shots. And Matt Corral past 10 yards has been very, very good. To the point where defenses are going to be scared. Now Alabama is spending the better part of this week. Today is really the last practice of the week. There's a walkthrough tomorrow. Defending our deep shots. They're planning on expanding that 15-yard box that I've told you so much about. And that's really a win because, like I said, this offense is designed to torture linebackers. So if you can cause false steps, if you can speed up the jet sweeps, which I expect to see a lot Saturday. The jet sweep to inside zone to quarterback keeper triple option could make an appearance. Like I said, I expect to see more in the John Rice Plumlee package this weekend, and I expect him to throw the ball. I think they've been holding that for this game. But it all depends on the wind. It all depends on the elements. If it gets sloppy, you're looking at what could be a 24-20 type game. And everybody's like, whoa, and everybody's looking at the final score and freaking out. Well, it's just because the deep passing game got taken away and you were able to compress that 15-yard box. Safeties didn't have to worry about behind them. They could just attack like Alabama is known for. Anyway. All right. POMcast, Stephen Willis, stick around.
You want to answer that, don't you? I bet it's just killing you seeing the soft glow just inches away. Someone wants to tell you something or ask you something. Oh, come on, answer it already! Just so we're clear, that wasn't my fault. Next time, ignore your inner voice. Don't text and drive. A message from Florida's trusted choice independent insurance agents.
Hey, this is Stephen Willis. I just want you to stick around a little longer. We're going to get back to the podcast right after these messages.
Tonight, nearly 40,000 veterans across the country are homeless. These men and women have pledged to serve our nation, and now we must serve them. Landlords across the country have helped make significant progress in reducing veteran homelessness by making housing available, but there is more that we can do to bring our veterans home. Visit www.va.gov/homeless to see how you can get involved. And if you are a veteran and you are experiencing homelessness, please call 877-4AID-VET. Thank you.
All right, last segment of the Wednesday POMcast. I'm your host, Stephen Willis. Again, you can follow us, like us, subscribe to us at all the places mentioned earlier. Please do so. If you prefer audio, we're on a plethora of podcatchers. We're talking about wet football, and it looks like Ole Miss is going to play a game in the mud this weekend. Good for them. But it could be an excellent equalizer against gazelles like Devontae Smith and Jalen Waddle. It's an equalizer. It really is. It's also an equalizer against Elijah Moore. Makes him a little bit easier for a linebacker or safety to cover him. But the offensive players know where they're going. Jerrion Ealy is primed to break out. He's a shifty guy, he's a fast guy, and he knows where he's going. Najee Harris is a fast guy, but he's more of a mutter. So you can kind of slow him down before he gets going, theoretically. If he gets going, he can be a handful. But Alabama, if it rains, and which it looks like it will, and we're proceeding as if they're going to play, and which with this forecast and this hurricane, they might not. They might call it off tomorrow. They might call it off today. Who knows? but we're going to proceed until we hear otherwise that they're going to play. And it doesn't look like rain amounts or wind are going to be high enough that warrants canceling a football game. That's just the truth. If the Weather Channel forecast for today is correct. So that means they're probably going to go. So we feel pretty safe in proceeding. So Alabama's defense through Pete Golding last year, much maligned. Alabama fans at this point want to just basically launch him into the sun. But I don't necessarily think that's fair. They're used to Kirby Smart. That's what they want. That Nick Saban, Kirby Smart defense where you just get constricted and the other team scores 7 points and you score 28 and it feels like you scored 56. That's what they want. Well, that's not going to happen when you run a spread system and score as quickly as they have been scoring. And doing that puts your defense in precarious situations and you end up giving up 19, 20 points. But you actually scored 56. It didn't feel like you scored 56. You actually scored 56. So you end up winning by 30. It feels like it was closer than it was. And all of a sudden they're looking at why. Well, the offense scored 56. It must be the defense's fault. I mean, that's just how this works. And that's how people just watch games that might like it. They might love it. They follow it, but they don't necessarily understand what's happening. Because the whole thing is, well, why is this happening? Why? And they can't really understand. So they look at the micro and they're told by the media, this prisoner of the moment media, that this went wrong. And it's all built to do this. This is the way this is designed. You only gave up 17 points. You scored 56. The goal is to win the game, and you did. I'm not one of these people that also are going to say that, Alabama is one of the most complete Nick Saban teams, and that's just not true. They just have continuity. Much like Dan Mullen. They're going to be head and shoulders above the rest of the SEC because all of their stuff was in at the beginning. There was an understanding at the beginning. That's one thing people need to realize when dealing with the media. They are all prisoners of the moment. This happened. This is always going to happen. They take what's going on right now and they just draw a straight line to the end of the season, and this is what's going to happen. There's no ability to change that until the next data point where they go to the end of the season. It's game to game, guys. It's going to change. There's going to be up there. They're all self-contained games. And at the end of it, all those self-contained games are put into a bag, and that is your season. You can't take your self-contained game and transitive property all the way to the end. It just doesn't work. There's so many factors, not to mention in this COVID year, which has even more. But in a normal season, there's so many factors that come into play that doesn't allow you to do that. But you need narratives. You need to basically decide as quickly as possible how this season really is, so that you can win, you can make money, you can beat the competition. It's all a race for opinions. All right. Well, thank you for joining us. Stephen Willis POMcast, streaming every weekday right here on Positively Ole Miss.